Emma Carter had always believed in trust. In her early 20s, she married Daniel Price with the quiet conviction that love was enough, that honesty would be the foundation of their life together. But love, she was beginning to understand, could be deceptively fragile. It was a Thursday evening when the world she thought she knew quietly fractured. Emma had come home from work earlier than usual, eager to surprise Daniel with tickets to the art exhibit he had mentioned weeks ago. She pushed open the door to their apartment, humming a tune she hadn't realized she'd learned in a piano class years ago. But the hum died in her throat the moment she heard the low murmur of voices from the living room. Voices that weren't meant to be there. She froze, clutching her coat like a lifeline. Her heart raced as she inched closer to the doorway. And there he was, Daniel, laughing, leaning a little too close to someone else. Her stomach twisted. It wasn't just the laughter. It was the intimacy, the familiarity he had reserved only for her. And now, it belonged to someone else. Emma felt a surge of something she couldn't immediately name. Betrayal, yes, but also disbelief. Surely, she reasoned, he couldn't be so careless. He must have an explanation. Yet, the sight of Daniel's hand brushing hers, another woman's hand, struck like a physical blow. She backed away quietly, letting the apartment door click softly behind her. The chill of the evening air pressed against her skin, but it was nothing compared to the cold sinking in her chest. The cab ride to her apartment across town was a blur. She didn't know if she cried or if she just stared blankly out the window, letting the city lights streak across her vision like tears. By the time she reached her apartment, clarity had begun to seep in. She could stay, she could fight, she could scream, but for what? Daniel's betrayal was absolute. And it was irreversible. The next few weeks were a study in quiet, methodical decision-making. Emma met with lawyers, sorted finances, and withdrew from social circles that had once celebrated her marriage. She kept her departure silent, a whisper rather than a storm. No confrontation, no spectacle. Daniel would wake up one morning and realize she was gone. Not with a dramatic note or a scene, but simply because she had chosen herself over the man she once loved. Evenings, once filled with shared dinners and laughter, became her time alone with her thoughts. She allowed herself to grieve, not for Daniel, but for the life she had believed she deserved. And as grief settled into resolve, a spark of determination ignited. If the world had been cruel to her heart, then she would become cruelly ambitious to herself. She would build a life so full, so radiant, that betrayal would no longer hold power over her. For now, she would disappear. But one day, Daniel Price would see what he had lost. And Emma Carter, quietly wounded but unbroken, would be ready. The apartment smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, a scent Emma had once associated with fresh starts. It had been 6 months since she walked out on Daniel Price, yet the sting of betrayal lingered like a shadow she couldn't quite shake. Moving into her own space, a modest, sunlit apartment in the heart of the city, was supposed to feel liberating. Instead, the silence pressed against her, reminding her of the life she had lost. Emma spent the first few weeks in quiet reflection, almost afraid to step into the world beyond her front door. Her career, once something she pursued with casual ambition, suddenly became her anchor. Long hours at the marketing firm she had joined years before stretched into nights filled with strategy sessions, client calls, and late-night brainstorming. Each completed project, every recognition from her supervisors, felt like a small victory against the void left by Daniel. She leaned on Lily more than she expected. Lily had been her friend since college, the one person who had always been unflinchingly honest. Over countless cups of coffee in a tiny bustling cafe, Emma poured out her anger, her confusion, her lingering sadness. Lily listened, nodded, sometimes scolded, but never offered hollow comfort. "You can't let him define you anymore," Lily said one evening, stirring her cappuccino absent-mindedly. "He made his choice. You made yours. Now it's time to make yourself matter." Emma wanted to argue, but deep down, she knew Lily was right. Daniel's betrayal had forced her into a corner, but the corner didn't have to be a prison. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Emma began to reclaim pieces of herself she had forgotten. She enrolled in a leadership workshop, attended networking events, and began sketching ideas for a marketing consultancy of her own. It was intoxicating, the sense that she could build something from scratch, something entirely her own. Yet, the nights were still hard. Emma often lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying memories that no longer fit together neatly. She thought about Daniel, about how easily he had turned a shared life into a lie. But she also began to think about herself, the woman who had allowed her trust to be so easily broken, and the woman who could rise from the wreckage. By the end of the year, Emma had taken her first tangible step forward. She left the firm she had once called home and founded Carter Strategies, a boutique marketing consultancy. The first few clients trickled in, each small contract a testament to her skill and resilience. She worked tirelessly, often late into the night, fueled by the quiet, simmering determination to succeed on her own terms. Friends noticed the change, though Emma herself felt both proud and cautious. She had rebuilt her life with care, brick by brick, but the memory of betrayal remained a silent motivator. She had not yet decided if revenge would ever come, but she knew one thing with absolute clarity. She would never be powerless again. One crisp spring morning, Emma walked into her new office, a sleek space bathed in sunlight and bustling with her small but dedicated team, and paused to take it all in. For the first time in months, maybe years, she allowed herself to smile. Daniel Price had thought he had left her behind. He had no idea that she was only beginning her ascent. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Emma's office, glinting off the sleek glass walls that now bore her name in bold modern lettering, Carter Strategies. It was hard to believe how far she had come in just a few years. From a woman crushed by betrayal, she had transformed into a force of competence and ambition. Emma's mornings were a whirlwind of client calls, team briefings, and strategic planning sessions. Each day was a testament to her hard work, and yet, there was a thrill in the challenge. She thrived on deadlines, on problem-solving, on watching small projects grow into major campaigns. Her life was no longer defined by loss. It was defined by her own choices, her own victories. Her team respected her, not just for her sharp mind, but for the quiet strength she exuded. Emma had a way of seeing potential where others saw obstacles, of turning doubt into motivation. She remembered the days when she had questioned her worth, when Daniel's betrayal had left her doubting everything about herself. Now she was the one setting the standards. A notification popped up on her phone. A prestigious marketing award nomination. Emma allowed herself a rare moment of pride, sipping her coffee as she stared at the message. She thought about the long nights, the relentless effort, and the unwavering focus that had brought her here. This recognition was more than an award. It was a validation of her resilience, her intelligence, and her determination to succeed on her own terms. Yet, even in her triumphs, there were moments when the past whispered. She thought of Daniel occasionally, though she kept the memory at arm's length. She wondered what he was doing, whether he had ever stopped to reflect on what he had lost. She didn't let it consume her. It was merely a shadow, faint but persistent. That afternoon, Emma met with a potential client at an upscale downtown cafe. As she discussed campaign strategies and branding initiatives, she noticed a familiar presence across the street. She froze for just a second, her heart giving a small involuntary jolt. It was Daniel, tall, confident, impeccably dressed, and unmistakably the man who had once held her heart. He didn't see her at first. Perhaps it was fate, or perhaps coincidence, that he had no idea the woman he had underestimated now sat not 5 feet away, transformed. Emma took a deep breath, letting her calm exterior mask the storm of emotions beneath. She focused on her meeting, answering questions, outlining her plans with the precision and charm that had become her trademark. But when she finally stepped outside, coffee in hand, Daniel was still there, staring at a building across the street. Emma allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. He had no idea how far she had come, no clue that the woman he had left behind was now thriving beyond anything he could have imagined. As she walked past him, their eyes met for the briefest moment. Emma's expression was polite but controlled, a subtle signal that she had changed. Daniel's brow furrowed, a flicker of recognition in his gaze. But before he could react, she was gone, slipping into the flow of pedestrians with the confidence of someone who had reclaimed her life completely. That encounter left a lingering thrill, a hint of something that went beyond professional pride. Emma knew that their paths would cross again. And when they did, she would be ready, not as the heartbroken woman of the past, but as someone who commanded respect, admiration, and perhaps a little envy. For now, Emma focused on the present, her team, her business, and her vision. But deep inside, a plan began to form. One that would ensure that Daniel Price never underestimated her again. The gala hall was dazzling. Crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and the hum of polite conversation mingling with the clink of glasses. Emma adjusted the sleeve of her tailored black dress, smoothing it down as she surveyed the crowd. This was her world now. High-profile clients, industry leaders, and opportunities that could elevate Carter strategies to new heights. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, exchanging handshakes and confident smiles, her mind calculating every impression she made. It was a dance she had learned over the years, turning charm into strategy and presence into power. But even as she immersed herself in the evening, part of her couldn't ignore the sense of anticipation that had been growing inside her for weeks. And then she saw him. Daniel Price stood near the grand staircase, laughing with a group of executives. His tailored suit fit him perfectly, the same effortless style he had always carried. But something was different. There was a hesitation in his posture, a subtle tension around his shoulders, as if the world he had once taken for granted had shifted. Emma's pulse quickened, though she kept her composure. She didn't approach immediately. Instead, she observed, noting the way he laughed at jokes that weren't funny, the slight furrow of his brow when someone questioned him. He was the same Daniel she had known, confident, charismatic, but something about him seemed smaller now, diminished by the invisible comparison between his past assumptions and her present reality. Then, as if fate enjoyed irony, he turned. Their eyes met. Daniel froze for just a moment, a beat long enough that Emma could see recognition flicker, followed by disbelief. He opened his mouth perhaps to speak, but no words came. Emma approached him with a measured smile, the kind that didn't reveal the storm inside. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm but carrying the authority she had cultivated over the years. "It's been a long time." He blinked, his surprise giving way to a polite, almost awkward smile. "Emma." Yes, it has." They shook hands, a formality that barely concealed the tension. Around them, the gala continued, oblivious to the unspoken history threading between the two of them. Daniel's eyes lingered a moment longer than necessary, scanning her as if trying to reconcile the woman before him with the one he had once dismissed. Emma held his gaze steadily. "You're doing well," she said, a hint of acknowledgement, and maybe a subtle reminder, in her tone. "I've heard about your new project with Price Enterprises." He nodded, caught off guard by her knowledge. "Yes, well, business keeps moving." "I imagine it does," Emma replied, her words light but pointed. "It's exciting when the unexpected happens, isn't it?" He gave a polite chuckle, clearly sensing the undercurrent of meaning but unsure how to respond. Emma turned slightly, scanning the crowd, and allowed a small private smirk. The power dynamic had shifted. She was no longer the woman who had walked away quietly. She was the one who commanded attention, who had rewritten the narrative of her own life. As she excused herself to mingle with other guests, Daniel watched her go. There was a flicker of something in his expression, regret, admiration, maybe even envy, but Emma didn't look back. Not yet. That night, as she returned to her penthouse, Emma allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The path ahead was clear. Their reunion was only the beginning. She would rise, and when the time came, she would show Daniel just how far she had come. But for now, she would savor the anticipation. The game had begun. Emma sat in her sleek corner office, the city skyline glowing through the windows behind her. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she reviewed the latest proposals, but her mind wasn't entirely on work. Daniel's face from the gala kept flickering in her thoughts, the surprise, the hesitation, the faint trace of something that could have been regret. It was time. Not for confrontation, not for drama, but for strategy. Emma didn't need to yell or expose past grievances. She had learned that the most effective revenge wasn't loud. It was subtle, precise, and undeniable. Her first move was professional. Daniel's company had recently pitched a project to one of her key clients. A project she knew had the potential to fail under his team's current approach. Emma crafted a counterproposal, tailored to the client's needs and executed flawlessly. She didn't send it directly as a challenge to Daniel. Instead, she positioned Carter Strategies as the natural, more competent choice. When the client called to accept her proposal, Emma allowed herself a quiet, private smile. It wasn't just a business victory. It was proof that she could outmaneuver him without saying a word. But the game wasn't purely professional. Emma began sprinkling subtle reminders of her transformation into social circles where Daniel frequented. Mutual contacts casually mentioned her speaking engagements, her growing team, and the recognition her company had earned. It was not meant to humiliate him. It was meant to assert that she had flourished while he had remained in his comfort zone. And yet, Emma discovered something unexpected. She felt a rush, not of malice, but of satisfaction, of empowerment. Each small success reinforced the truth she had always known but had sometimes doubted. She was capable, strong, and deserving of more than anyone had given her. The encounters with Daniel continued, as if fate enjoyed testing her resolve. At an industry luncheon a week later, their tables happened to be adjacent. Daniel's expression tightened as he noticed her commanding presence, the ease with which she engaged influential clients. She greeted him with a polite nod, her tone light, even warm, but the spark of authority she exuded was unmistakable. "You've built quite the reputation," he said, attempting casual conversation, though his words felt slightly forced. Emma tilted her head, considering him. "It's been a lot of work," she replied, letting the emphasis rest on her effort, not his perception. "I think anyone can succeed if they focus on what truly matters." He nodded, clearly conscious of the unspoken challenge in her voice. Emma didn't need to say more. The statement alone was enough to remind him, and perhaps others nearby, that she had transformed herself into someone who could no longer be underestimated. Later that evening, Emma reflected on the subtle victories. She realized that revenge wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving to herself that she had not been broken by betrayal. Every step she took, every decision she made, reinforced her independence. Daniel Price would see it eventually, yes, but the real triumph was internal. She had taken control of her life. Yet, as she looked out at the city lights, a flicker of curiosity stirred within her. There was another element she hadn't anticipated. An unexpected, complicated tension whenever Daniel was near. She hadn't anticipated the pang of nostalgia, the brief acknowledgement that part of her heart had not fully hardened. Emma allowed herself a private laugh. Revenge could be complicated, and so could the heart. But for now, she would continue playing the game. Measured, deliberate, and entirely on her terms. The board was set. And Emma Carter intended to win. The art gallery buzzed with quiet excitement, the soft hum of conversation punctuated by the occasional clink of champagne glasses. Emma moved through the crowd with effortless grace, exchanging greetings and networking with potential clients. The gallery opening had been suggested by a partner, but Emma had come with another, unspoken purpose. A chance to immerse herself in beauty, in creativity, and, subconsciously, distance herself from the lingering thoughts of Daniel. She paused in front of a large, abstract painting, its swirling colors chaotic yet harmonious. As she studied the brushstrokes, a voice interrupted her thoughts. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Emma turned to see a man with warm brown eyes and an easy smile. He extended a hand. "Alex Monroe. I don't believe we've met." Emma shook his hand, feeling an unexpected spark of energy in the gesture. "Emma Carter," she replied. She noted the calm confidence in his presence, the way he seemed genuinely interested without any hint of pretense. There was something refreshing about him, a stark contrast to the polished, sometimes calculating atmosphere she often encountered in business settings. They walked through the gallery together, discussing the artwork, life, and the subtle interplay between creativity and success. Emma found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, caught off guard by the ease of connection. Alex was intelligent and charming, but not in a way that demanded attention. He had a quiet magnetism that drew her in without overwhelming her. And then, inevitably, the conversation shifted. "I've heard of Carter Strategies," Alex said casually. "You've built quite a reputation." Emma allowed herself a small private smile. "It's been a journey," she replied. "Hard work mostly, and some unexpected lessons along the way." She glanced away briefly, thinking of Daniel, and then back at Alex. "Sometimes the lessons are the ones you'd rather avoid." Alex's gaze softened. "I know that feeling. But sometimes, those lessons push us to places we never thought possible." Emma felt a flutter in her chest, an unfamiliar combination of excitement and caution. She wasn't used to this. She had spent so long focused on rebuilding her life, on reclaiming power, that the idea of allowing someone new into her world felt both thrilling and terrifying. Her phone buzzed in her clutch bag, and she glanced at it. A notification from a news site highlighting a recent campaign victory for Carter Strategies. She smiled, proud, but the reminder also brought another thought. Daniel. She hadn't seen him at the gallery yet, and part of her wondered if he would appear, if he would notice Alex, if the old tension would spark anew. As the evening progressed, Daniel did in fact arrive. Unexpectedly, and with unmistakable recognition the moment he spotted Emma. His eyes flicked to Alex, a shadow crossing his features. Emma caught it, and for a fraction of a second, she felt the thrill of power. Not because of malice, but because she now had a choice. The past or the present, regret or possibility. Daniel approached cautiously. "Emma," he said, voice measured. "It's been a while." Emma acknowledged him with a polite nod, introducing Alex with ease. "Daniel. This is Alex. Alex, this is Daniel Price." The brief exchange was cordial, but Daniel's gaze lingered on her longer than necessary, scanning for the old Emma he had once known. Emma felt a subtle surge of confidence, and a quiet acknowledgement that things were changing in ways even she hadn't predicted. Later, as she walked home, Emma reflected on the night. Daniel's presence was still a thorn, but Alex's warmth had sparked something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Revenge could wait. There were more important battles now, those of the heart, of choice, and of discovering who she wanted to be, not just what she could achieve. For the first time in a long while, Emma realized that life wasn't just about proving others wrong. It was about embracing possibilities, even when they complicated the neat plan she had been crafting for years. And yet, Daniel Price was still a factor. The game continued, but the rules were evolving. The office was quiet, the hum of the city below muted through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Emma leaned back in her chair, reviewing a client report, when a sharp knock at the door startled her. She looked up to see Daniel standing in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral but his eyes betraying something she hadn't seen in years: uncertainty. "Emma," he said, voice steady but soft. "Do you have a moment?" She gestured toward the chair opposite her, curious but cautious. "Of course," she replied, keeping her tone calm. She noted how the man before her was no longer the one she had left behind. He looked smaller somehow, less assured. That hadn't happened by chance. Daniel hesitated, then finally spoke. "I've been thinking about the past, about us." Emma held her gaze, letting him feel the weight of her confidence. "And I made a mistake," he admitted, the words uncomfortable on his tongue. "I took you for granted. I didn't appreciate what I had until it was gone." Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. She had expected this moment, but hearing it still stirred a mix of old frustration and new satisfaction. "Daniel," she said carefully, "people don't get second chances just because they say they're sorry. Actions matter more than words." He nodded, swallowing. "I know. And I see that now. You've done something incredible, Emma. You've built a life, a company, a reputation. I underestimated you, and I see that clearly." A quiet satisfaction passed through her. This was the revelation she had waited years for. Not just that Daniel recognized her strength, but that she no longer needed his acknowledgement to feel it herself. She had proven what mattered most, to herself. "And yet," Daniel continued, a flicker of vulnerability breaking through, "I can't help but feel I lost something irreplaceable. Not just professionally, but personally." Emma allowed herself a slow, measured smile. "That's something you'll have to live with," she said. "I've moved on, Daniel. You should too." He looked down, seemingly grappling with the truth. "I thought I could. I don't know. I thought things could just go back to the way they were, but I see now that they can't. You've grown. You're different. Better." Emma leaned forward slightly, her tone softening, not because she was tempted to return to the past, but because she felt the full arc of her journey. Betrayal, grief, reinvention, and now recognition. "I am better," she said simply. "Not because of you but because I chose to be. And that's what matters." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing, absorbing the weight of her words. Then with a hesitant exhale, he finally spoke again. "I guess I just wanted you to know that I see you. The woman I lost. And maybe, in another life, things could have been different." Emma let that hang in the air. There was no bitterness in her reply, only clarity. "Perhaps," she said, "but this life, this one is mine. And I'm choosing what comes next." As Daniel left her office, Emma felt a quiet release. The past had been acknowledged, the lesson delivered, and her power reaffirmed. The revelation wasn't just for him. It was for her. She had survived betrayal, rebuilt her life, and discovered her own worth in ways she never could have imagined. And as the city lights shimmered outside, Emma realized something else. The game had changed. Revenge was no longer about proving him wrong. It was about embracing life fully, and perhaps if she allowed it, love on her own terms. Emma stood on the balcony of her penthouse, the city lights sparkling like a constellation beneath her. The evening breeze tugged gently at her hair, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the garden below. She inhaled deeply, letting the calm settle over her. After years of turmoil, betrayal, and relentless effort, she had finally reached a moment of clarity. The events of the past months replayed in her mind. The subtle victories over Daniel, the late nights building Carter strategies, the unexpected warmth of Alex's presence, and the encounters that reminded her how far she had come. Each moment had contributed to a single truth. She was no longer defined by the mistakes of others. She was defined by herself. A soft knock on her balcony door pulled her from her thoughts. Alex stepped inside, carrying 2 cups of tea and a tentative smile. "I thought you might need a warm drink," he said, handing her one. Emma took it, her fingers brushing his briefly. "Thank you," she said, smiling. The intimacy of the gesture was comforting, a reminder that life had room for connection beyond ambition and revenge. They stood side by side, sipping tea in companionable silence. Finally, Alex spoke. "You've done so much, Emma. And not just with your company. With yourself. I've watched you grow and it's inspiring." Emma felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't anticipated. "It hasn't been easy," she admitted, "but every step was worth it. Even the hard ones." "And Daniel?" Alex asked carefully. "Does he still matter?" Emma considered the question. A part of her heart still flickered at the thought of him, the ghost of a past that had once hurt so profoundly. But she had learned something crucial. The past could inform the present, but it did not have to control it. "He taught me a lesson," she said softly. "Not intentionally, of course, but the lesson was mine to take. And I did. I've moved on. I've chosen what matters now." Alex's hand brushed hers again, this time lingering. "And me." Emma looked at him, her smile quiet but confident. "You're part of what matters," she said, surprising herself with the honesty of it. "I'm open to seeing where this goes, without the weight of the past dragging me down." It wasn't a promise of perfection, or of an easy path ahead. It was something more important, a choice rooted in freedom, trust, and the awareness that she could shape her own life. Later that evening, a message arrived on her phone. "Daniel." She paused before opening it, curiosity tempered by a sense of closure. The message was brief and straightforward. "I see you. Truly. And I hope your life is everything you've dreamed it can be." Emma smiled, setting the phone aside. She didn't need more than that. No confrontation. No reconciliation. Just acknowledgement, and a silent affirmation that she had the power to write her own story. As she and Alex stepped onto the balcony together, the night sky stretched endlessly above them. The city lights reflected the journey she had traveled. Betrayal, heartbreak, resilience, and triumph. And in that moment, Emma Carter felt something she hadn't felt in years. Complete, unshakable freedom. The game had been played, the lessons learned, and the past faced. What remained was hers to create. A life of success, love, and self-determination, unbound by anyone else's choices. Emma took Alex's hand, feeling the warmth and certainty of the connection. The future stretched ahead, full of promise. And she was ready. Finally, fully ready, to embrace it. The sun rose over the city, golden light spilling across the skyline and filling Emma's penthouse with warmth. The quiet hum of morning was punctuated by laughter and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Emma sat at the kitchen island, a cup in hand, watching Alex move effortlessly around the space, preparing breakfast. It was ordinary, yet it felt extraordinary. A life she had carved out entirely on her own terms. She thought back to the days of betrayal and heartbreak, the moments when Daniel's infidelity had seemed like the end of everything. Those memories no longer carried the sting they once had. Instead, they served as markers along the path that had led her here, to independence, to success, and to love that was chosen, not convenient. Her phone buzzed with notifications. An email from a major client praising Carter Strategy's latest campaign, a message from a friend celebrating a recent personal milestone, and an industry newsletter highlighting her as one of the city's top emerging CEOs. Emma smiled, feeling the satisfaction of years of effort culminating in tangible recognition. Each achievement was a reminder that her life was built not on revenge or regret, but on persistence, vision, and self-belief. Alex joined her, sliding into the chair beside her with a teasing grin. "You've been up early again," he said. "Planning world domination, or just checking in on your empire?" Emma laughed, feeling the lightness of the moment. "A little of both," she admitted. "But mostly, just enjoying that it's mine." He reached for her hand, a simple gesture filled with unspoken understanding. "And it's clear you've earned every bit of it," he said softly. "But I'm glad you've let me in too." Emma's smile softened, a mixture of affection and quiet certainty. "You've earned your place, Alex. Not because of what I've built, but because of who you are. I'm ready for this. Real partnership, real connection." The thought brought her peace. For years, she had focused on rebuilding herself, establishing boundaries, and rising above the past. Now, she could embrace the present fully, confident in her choices and clear about her desires. It wasn't about Daniel anymore, or proving him wrong. It was about the life she had chosen, the love she had accepted, and the future she was determined to shape. Emma moved to the balcony, the city stretching endlessly before her. The skyline was alive, full of possibilities, a mirror to her own journey. The distant memory of Daniel's brief acknowledgement, the regret he had shown, the lessons she had learned, no longer carried weight. It was a chapter closed, a necessary step in the story of her rise. She turned back to Alex, hand in hand, feeling the steady rhythm of life flowing between them. "Here's to beginnings," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else, "and to living a life we choose, without fear or regret." Alex smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Here's to that," he echoed. As the city woke below them, Emma felt a profound sense of freedom. The past was behind her, the present was rich with possibility, and the future stretched wide and open. She had faced betrayal, built herself anew, found love again, and reclaimed her power entirely. Emma Carter had risen, not through revenge alone, but through resilience, self-discovery, and courage. And now, standing at the dawn of a life she had designed, she knew one thing with absolute certainty: the best was yet to come. The city pulsed with life, the morning sun painting everything in hues of promise. Emma smiled, heart full, eyes bright, ready to embrace every new chapter that awaited. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.